I'm Mark Wilson, 34 years old, and I've always been the family outcast. At my grandfather's 80th birthday dinner, my cousin Tyler smirked as he announced, "Mark, this table is for family. You can find a spot outside." Everyone laughed while I silently retreated to a corner table. 2 hours later, the waiter dropped a $3,000 bill in front of me. I took a sip of my coffee and chuckled. They had no idea who was covering it tonight. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been underestimated by family. Trust me, this revenge is worth sticking around for. I was born into what you might call a complicated family situation. My mother, Sophia, was considered the black sheep of the prestigious Wilson family. She fell in love with my father, Nathan Reed, a brilliant but struggling musician without the pedigree or bank account the Wilsons expected for their daughters. When she announced her engagement, my grandfather Roger practically disowned her. "You're throwing your life away on a nobody," he told her at the dinner table, while the rest of the family watched in uncomfortable silence. My parents married anyway, and I came along a year later. We lived in a small apartment across town from the sprawling Wilson estate where my mother had grown up. Despite having limited means, those early years were happy. My father adored my mother, and they both doted on me. Dad would play guitar while Mom sang lullabies, and our tiny home was filled with more love than all the mansions in our city combined. Everything changed when I was 7. Dad was driving home from a late-night gig when a drunk driver crossed the center line. He died instantly. Mom was devastated, and suddenly we had no income. The medical bills and funeral expenses wiped out what little savings they had managed to accumulate. That's when Uncle Walter and Aunt Pamela reluctantly stepped in. They offered to become my guardians when my mother fell into a deep depression that required hospitalization. "It's what family does," Uncle Walter said, though his tone suggested it was an unwelcome obligation rather than a loving choice. Moving into their house should have been a comfort, but instead, it marked the beginning of my life as an outsider. They had 3 children of their own, Tyler, Jessica, and Madison. From day one, the difference in how I was treated was painfully obvious. "Remember, you're a guest here," Aunt Pamela told me on my first night. "We expect you to be grateful for everything we provide." Tyler, 2 years older than me, made it his mission to remind me daily that I didn't belong. "Your dad was a loser, and that's why you're poor," he'd taunt when adults weren't listening. "My dad says your mom made her bed, and now you both have to lie in it." At family gatherings, I was seated at the kids' table long after my cousins had been invited to join the adults. Christmas brought mountains of presents for Tyler, Jessica, and Madison, while I received practical items like socks and school supplies. My birthday parties, if acknowledged at all, were modest affairs compared to the lavish celebrations thrown for my cousins. Despite all this, I excelled in school. Education became my escape and my hope for a better future. I spent hours in the library, partly to avoid going home, and partly because I'd discovered a natural talent for mathematics and computer science. My high school teachers recognized my potential and encouraged me to apply to top universities. When I was accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship, Uncle Walter's response was telling. "Well, I suppose you'll need loans for the rest. We've been saving for our children's education since they were born." College was a struggle financially, but for the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I worked 3 jobs: campus IT support, weekend shifts at a local diner, and freelance coding projects, while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, often sleeping just 4 hours a night, but I was determined to succeed. During those years, invitations to family events became scarce. I missed Thanksgiving dinners because I couldn't afford the flight home. When my mother finally recovered enough to live independently in a small apartment, the family barely acknowledged her existence. She passed away during my senior year, a quiet death that most of the Wilsons marked with obligatory flowers but no tears. After graduating with honors, I landed a job at a promising tech startup in San Francisco. The salary was modest by Silicon Valley standards, but it felt like a fortune to me. I rented a tiny studio apartment and poured myself into work, determined to prove my worth through success. The startup grew, and so did my responsibilities. I went from junior developer to team lead within 2 years. When the company was acquired by a larger tech firm, I received my first substantial windfall from my equity stake, a sum I invested rather than spent. Over the next decade, I moved through progressively more prestigious positions, eventually becoming a senior architect at one of the top 5 tech companies. I lived comfortably but modestly, channeling most of my increasing wealth into investments and startup opportunities that my industry connections brought my way. All this time, I maintained minimal contact with the Wilson family. The occasional birthday card or obligatory phone call for major holidays was the extent of our relationship. They knew I worked in computers, but I never volunteered details about my growing success, and they never asked. 3 months ago, everything changed again when I received an unexpected call from Elena Vega, the CEO of Quantum Sphere Technologies. "Mark, we need someone with your vision to take us to the next level," she said. "We want you as our new CTO, with an equity package that reflects how much we value your expertise." The offer was extraordinary, a C-suite position at one of the most innovative companies in the industry, with compensation that would multiply my already substantial net worth. More importantly, QST was on the verge of announcing a revolutionary quantum computing breakthrough that would change the tech landscape forever. A week after accepting the position, I received an invitation to my grandfather Roger's 80th birthday celebration at Elysium, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. The invitation came from my Aunt Pamela, with a note that read, "It would mean a lot to your grandfather if the whole family were present." I doubted that was true, but after a moment's hesitation, I RSVP'd that I would attend. Perhaps it was time to close this chapter of my life, to see them all one last time before I potentially became too visible to ignore. What I didn't tell them was that my new position was about to be announced, or that the acquisition deal I was overseeing would be finalized the very day of the dinner. I also didn't mention that Elysium's owner, Antonio Rossi, had become a good friend after I'd invested in his first restaurant 5 years earlier. Some things, I decided, were better left as surprises. The evening of my grandfather's birthday arrived with perfect weather, a crisp fall night with clear skies and a gentle breeze. I pulled up to Elysium in my Tesla Model S, nothing too flashy but nice enough to avoid feeling completely out of place. The valet raised an eyebrow when I handed him the keys. "Will you be dining with the Wilson party, sir?" he asked. "Yes, I'm Mark Wilson," I replied. His expression shifted subtly. "Of course, Mr. Wilson. Antonio mentioned you might be joining us tonight. Welcome." The restaurant was every bit as impressive as its reputation suggested. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, casting a warm glow over marble floors and hand-painted murals. A live string quartet played softly in the corner of the main dining area, and the air carried the intoxicating aroma of truffle and aged wine. Antonio spotted me from across the room and immediately came to greet me with an enthusiastic embrace. "Mark! It's been too long, my friend. I've saved the best table for your family gathering." "Thank you, Antonio. I appreciate it. For you, anything. That investment you made when no one else would take a chance on me. I never forget such kindness." He lowered his voice. "I understand from your assistant that there are some special arrangements for tonight?" "Yes, everything as we discussed. Consider it done." He patted my shoulder. "Now let me show you to your party." As we approached the private dining area, I could already hear the loud, confident voice of my cousin Tyler dominating the conversation. Some things never changed. The room fell into a momentary hush as Antonio led me in. 12 pairs of eyes turned to assess me, most with barely concealed surprise that I'd actually shown up. My grandfather Roger sat at the head of the table, his once imposing figure now somewhat diminished by age but his eyes still sharp and evaluating. Uncle Walter and Aunt Pamela flanked him on either side, both dressed impeccably, Walter in a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and Pamela dripping in jewelry that she made sure caught the light with every gesture. Tyler sat next to his father, his wife Megan beside him, both looking like they'd stepped out of a luxury magazine advertisement. My cousins Madison and Jessica were there with their husbands, along with a few other extended family members I barely recognized. "Mark," my grandfather acknowledged with a slight nod. "You made it." "Happy birthday, grandfather," I said, approaching to shake his hand. He accepted the gesture with minimal enthusiasm. "You remember everyone, I assume," he said, not bothering with proper introductions. "Of course." I nodded politely to the group. Tyler stood up, his 6'2" frame emphasizing his practiced power stance. "Well, look who's here. The prodigal cousin returns." "Still fixing computers for a living?" "Something like that," I answered vaguely. "Mark, you can sit over there." Aunt Pamela pointed to a chair wedged in the corner, clearly added as an afterthought. As I moved toward the indicated seat, Jessica caught my eye and offered a genuine smile. Among all my cousins, she had been the only one who ever showed me kindness. "It's good to see you, Mark," she said warmly. "It's been 5 years? Almost 7, actually," I corrected. "At Madison's wedding." Madison barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, right. You were there." I settled into my corner seat as conversations resumed around me. No one bothered to include me as they discussed vacation homes, stock portfolios, and private school choices for their children. Tyler's voice rose above the others as he bragged about his latest business venture. "The expansion into Asian markets is going to double our revenue next year," he announced. "Dad and I are closing the Singapore deal next month." Uncle Walter nodded approvingly. "The Wilson Financial Group is positioned to become one of the top 10 investment firms on the East Coast." My grandfather raised his glass. "To the Wilson legacy, stronger than ever." Everyone clinked glasses while I sipped my water quietly. The waiter approached to take drink orders, working his way around the table. "And for you, sir?" he finally asked me. "Just sparkling water for now, thank you." Tyler snorted. "Come on, Mark, grandfather is buying tonight. At least order something with alcohol." "I'm fine with water." "Still counting pennies?" "Some things never change," Tyler said, loud enough for everyone to hear. A few uncomfortable chuckles circulated around the table. The sommelier approached with wine lists, distributing them to everyone except me. When I reached out to take one, Tyler intercepted it. "We'll be ordering bottles for the table," he said dismissively. "No need to waste a list on someone who can't tell a Bordeaux from a Burgundy." More laughter, slightly more comfortable this time. I noticed Jessica frowning at her brother's behavior, but she remained silent. As appetizers were ordered, foie gras, truffle-infused scallops, imported caviar, I could feel the weight of unspoken judgments around me. The conversations deliberately excluded me, pivoting whenever I might have something relevant to contribute. "The new yacht is magnificent," Uncle Walter was saying. 45 feet, custom interior. "We should all do a Mediterranean cruise this summer," Aunt Pamela suggested. "Just family, of course." My phone vibrated in my pocket. Checking it discreetly, I saw a message from Elena. "Board meeting in 30 minutes. Deal is ready to sign. Call in when you can." I texted back. "We'll step out shortly." As I looked up from my phone, I noticed the waiter approaching with a seating chart in hand, consulting with Aunt Pamela. They were rearranging the table for the main course, moving to the grand table in the center of the private dining room. Grandfather Roger stood up, tapping his glass for attention. "Before we move to dinner, I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate with me. Looking around this table, I see the strength and success of the Wilson name. I'm proud of what we've built and what we'll continue to build together." His eyes swept the table, deliberately skipping over me. Tyler seized the moment, standing to join my grandfather. "And now, let's move to our main table for dinner. Antonio has reserved his best for the Wilson family tonight." That's when he turned to me with a smirk that brought back every childhood slight, every teenage humiliation, every adult dismissal. "Mark," Tyler announced loudly, placing his hand on my shoulder with mock sympathy. This table is for family. You can find a spot outside. He gestured toward a small table near the service entrance, clearly separated from the main celebration. The restaurant's pretty full tonight, but they managed to squeeze in an extra spot. The room fell silent for a moment before nervous laughter broke out. Uncle Walter cleared his throat but said nothing to contradict his son. Aunt Pamela busied herself with her napkin, avoiding eye contact. "Tyler, that's enough," Jessica said quietly, but her husband touched her arm, silently warning her not to make a scene. "What?" Tyler feigned innocence. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. This is a milestone celebration for grandfather. The main table should be for actual family members who contribute to the Wilson legacy." My grandfather took a slow sip of his wine, his silence a tacit approval of Tyler's behavior. In that moment, I was 7 years old again, standing in Uncle Walter's massive house with my small suitcase, hearing Aunt Pamela explain that I would sleep in the converted storage room because the real children needed their space. I was 12 again, waiting alone after school because Uncle Walter forgot it was his turn to pick me up, walking 3 miles home in the rain while my cousins rode in warm, dry comfort. I was 17, opening a Christmas gift containing second-hand clothes while Tyler unwrapped keys to a brand new BMW. Every slight, every exclusion, every painful reminder that I was tolerated but never truly accepted came rushing back like a physical blow. "So what's it going to be, Mark?" Tyler pressed, enjoying my discomfort. "Should we have the staff set up a card table for you? Maybe in the kitchen with the help?" His wife Megan giggled behind her hand. I looked around the table, searching for any ally besides Jessica, whose expression showed distress but whose voice had gone silent. There was nothing but averted eyes or amused smirks. With as much dignity as I could muster, I stood up. "The small table is fine." "There we go!" Tyler clapped his hands together. "Always the practical one, aren't you? Good old reliable Mark, never making waves." As I moved toward the isolated table, I heard Madison whisper to her husband, "I told you he'd just take it. He always does." The waiter assigned to my table looked mortified on my behalf. "Sir, I can speak to the manager if you prefer a different arrangement," he offered quietly. "This is fine, thank you," I assured him. "I appreciate your concern." From my new position, I had a clear view of the family table. They quickly resumed their celebration as if I'd never been there, ordering more bottles of champagne and the most expensive items on the menu. Tyler was particularly animated, encouraging everyone to indulge. "Get the Wagyu, Dad! And Mom, you love the lobster thermidor. Grandfather should try the chef's special aged ribeye. It's only $180. I ordered a simple pasta dish and coffee, then pulled out my phone. The board meeting would be starting in 10 minutes, and I needed to prepare. This might actually work out better. I could take the call in relative privacy. As I reviewed the acquisition documents one last time, memories continued to surface, painful, searing recollections I'd tried to bury under years of hard work and independence. I remembered my high school graduation, standing alone taking photos while Tyler's entire celebration was catered with professional photographers. I remembered calling Aunt Pamela when I got into MIT, only to hear her say, "That's nice, Mark, but we're a bit busy with Tyler's football championship right now. Can we talk later?" They never called back. I remembered my mother's funeral, small and sparsely attended, where Uncle Walter checked his watch repeatedly and left early for a pressing business matter. I later learned the pressing matter was Tyler's sailing competition. My phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Elena. "Mark, we're all here. Are you able to join the call?" "Yes, connecting now," I said, putting in my earpiece and opening my laptop. "Gentlemen, Mark Reed has joined us," Elena announced to the board. "Mark, the acquisition documents are ready. Meridian Tech has accepted our final offer of $2.8 billion. We just need your final approval before signing." "I've reviewed everything," I confirmed. "The integration plans are solid, and their quantum encryption patents will give us at least a 3-year lead on competitors." I approve the acquisition. Excellent. There was applause on the other end of the line. Mark, you've orchestrated one of the most strategic acquisitions in our industry this year. The press release goes out at midnight, and trading will be halted until the market announcement tomorrow morning. Thank you, Elena. This positions us exactly where we want to be. As I ended the call, I noticed a commotion at the entrance to our private dining area. Antonio was personally escorting 3 people toward my table: Richard Blackwood, the tech industry's most prominent venture capitalist, Senator Diana Clark, chair of the Congressional Technology Committee, and James Chin, founder of Meridian Tech. Mark. Richard boomed, grabbing the attention of everyone in the room, including my suddenly silent family. We couldn't wait until tomorrow to congratulate you in person. The Meridian acquisition is absolutely brilliant. I stood to greet them, acutely aware of the stares from the family table. James insisted on finding you to shake your hand himself. Senator Clark added, beaming. This merger will create thousands of new jobs in the tech sector. James stepped forward. Mark, your vision for how our technologies can combine is nothing short of revolutionary. I couldn't be prouder to have Meridian become part of Quantum Sphere under your leadership. Antonio was practically glowing with pride. Mr. Reed is one of our most valued patrons, he told the group. Anything you need tonight is on the house. Shall I arrange a larger table for your celebration? Thank you, Antonio, but that won't be necessary, I replied. These gentlemen just stopped by briefly. I'm actually here for a family event. I gestured toward the main table, where every face reflected varying degrees of shock. Ah, I see. Richard followed my gaze. We won't keep you from your family then. Just wanted to personally congratulate our industry's newest billionaire before the news breaks tomorrow. The word billionaire hung in the air like a thunderclap. As my business associates departed with final congratulations, I sat back down at my small table, took a sip of my coffee, and waited for the inevitable. The silence from the family table lasted approximately 30 seconds before erupting into hurried whispers. I could see Tyler leaning toward Uncle Walter, gesturing animatedly while Aunt Pamela's hand fluttered to her pearl necklace, a nervous habit she'd had for as long as I could remember. I returned to my pasta, eating slowly and deliberately. From the corner of my eye, I noticed my grandfather watching me with a calculating expression I recognized all too well, the look he gave potential business opportunities. My phone buzzed again with a text from Antonio. Everything proceeding as planned? Perfect timing, I replied. The restaurant's televisions, normally tuned to muted financial news, suddenly seemed more interesting to my family as the ticker at the bottom of the screen began displaying rumors of a major acquisition in the tech sector. I noticed Uncle Walter squinting to read the scrolling text. Jessica was the first to approach my table, her expression a mixture of confusion and genuine happiness. Mark, she said softly, was that Senator Clark I just saw? And what was that about an acquisition? I gestured to the chair across from me. Would you like to sit down? She glanced back at the family table, where Tyler was making slashing motions across his throat, then deliberately turned and sat down. I would, thank you. To answer your question, yes, that was Senator Clark. She's been supportive of our company's expansion efforts. The acquisition is just business. We're purchasing a smaller tech firm with complementary technology. But they called you a billionaire, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled slightly. Stock valuations can be misleading. All these years, she began, then paused. We never knew. You never said anything. Would it have mattered, Jessica? Would anyone have treated me differently if they knew I had money, rather than because of who I am? She looked down at her hands. I'd like to think I would have been the same. I've always regretted not standing up for you more. You were the only one who ever showed me kindness. I acknowledged. I haven't forgotten that. Before she could respond, Tyler materialized beside our table, his expression transformed into a broad, insincere smile. Mark. Cousin. Why are you sitting over here all alone? There's plenty of room at the main table. We were just rearranging seats anyway. His voice was loud enough to carry to nearby diners. Jessica, what are you doing? We're about to cut grandfather's cake. Jessica looked at me apologetically. Will you join us, Mark? I'm comfortable here, actually. Tyler's smile tightened. Don't be ridiculous. Your family. Whatever I said earlier was just a joke. You know how I kid around. Do I? I asked calmly. His eyes narrowed momentarily before the fake smile returned. Come on, Mark. Grandfather wants the whole family together. I'll consider it, I replied noncommittally. As Tyler reluctantly retreated, Antonio approached again with the sommelier. Mr. Reed, I thought you might enjoy this particular vintage to celebrate your news. He presented a bottle of Chateau Margaux 1982. One of the last in our cellar. That's very generous, Antonio. Perhaps a glass. The sommelier poured with a flourish, and Antonio raised his own glass that had appeared mysteriously in his hand. To visionaries who change the world while remaining humble enough to remember their roots. I clinked glasses with him, aware that the entire family was watching this exchange with rapt attention. I understand there may be some changes to the billing arrangements tonight? Antonio asked just loudly enough to be overheard. Yes, there will be. Thank you for accommodating the last-minute request. It's my pleasure, Mr. Reed. Your table is always waiting for you here. As Antonio departed, I noticed my grandfather slowly rising from his seat, using his cane for support despite his obvious desire to appear strong. He made his way to my table with deliberate steps, waving away Uncle Walter's attempt to assist him. Mark, he said, his voice gravelly with age but still commanding. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Of course you should be seated with the family. I met his gaze steadily. Is that what you believe, grandfather? His eyes, shrewd from decades of business negotiations, assessed me anew. I've always believed families should stick together. The Wilsons have a legacy to uphold. Interesting, I replied. I've been a Wilson my entire life, but tonight was the first time I heard you include me in that legacy. He frowned slightly. Perhaps we've had our differences in the past. I'm an old man now, and I've come to appreciate the importance of family connections. Or business connections? I suggested quietly. A flash of something, respect possibly, crossed his features before he composed himself. Why don't you join us for cake? We can discuss your business ventures. I'll be there shortly, I promised. As he returned to the main table, I noticed the restaurant staff beginning to arrange a lavish birthday cake on a side table. Crystal glasses were being filled with champagne for a toast, and the string quartet had been instructed to prepare for happy birthday. My phone buzzed one final time. The press release had been approved and scheduled. By morning, everyone would know about the acquisition and my role in it. I watched as Tyler directed the proceedings like a conductor, ensuring he remained the center of attention despite it being my grandfather's celebration. He ordered more champagne, insisted on special lighting for photos, and continued encouraging everyone to order additional delicacies for the table. The night is young, and we're celebrating. Get the chocolate soufflés for everyone. They take 30 minutes to prepare, so order them now. And another round of those seafood towers. I finally stood and walked over to join the family gathering. As I approached, chairs were hurriedly rearranged to create a space next to my grandfather, a seat of honor that hadn't existed for me an hour earlier. There he is, Tyler announced grandly. The prodigal cousin returns to the fold. Mark, we saved you some champagne. Thank you, I said simply, accepting a glass. As the cake was presented, an elaborate three-tier creation adorned with gold leaf, Tyler raised his glass high. A toast to Grandfather Roger Wilson, patriarch of the Wilson family, founder of Wilson Enterprises, and the man who taught us all the value of family loyalty and business acumen. Everyone drank enthusiastically. And, Tyler continued, turning to me with that same insincere smile, a special welcome back to our cousin Mark, who it seems has been keeping secrets from us about his success. Who knew fixing computers could be so lucrative? A few uncomfortable chuckles circulated around the table. I raised my own glass. To my grandfather on his 80th birthday. May your celebration be everything you deserve. The double meaning wasn't lost on Jessica, who caught my eye with a slight raise of her eyebrow. As the cake was distributed and plates of additional desserts arrived, the conversation awkwardly shifted to include me. Suddenly, everyone was interested in my work, my life, my business ventures. Questions about my company, my role, my connections flowed freely, though no one directly asked about my net worth. Through it all, I provided minimal information, watching as the family that had excluded me for decades performed an elaborate dance of retroactive inclusion. You know, Mark, Uncle Walter said expansively, you should come to the lake house next month. The whole family will be there for the annual retreat. We've missed having you at these gatherings. Have you? I asked mildly. Of course. Aunt Pamela interjected. We always say, I wonder what Mark is up to these days. Don't we, Walter? Uncle Walter nodded vigorously. Absolutely. Family is family, after all. I noticed the waiter approaching with several leather folders, and I knew the moment of truth was about to arrive. The waiter approached our table with practiced grace, carrying several leather bill folders. Excuse me, he said, addressing the entire table. I have the checks for this evening. Tyler reached out automatically. I'll take those. We'll figure out how to split it. The waiter hesitated. Actually, sir, I have instructions to present this to Mr. Reed. He placed a single folder directly in front of me. Tyler's confident expression faltered. There must be some mistake. This is our family dinner for my grandfather. No mistake, sir, the waiter replied politely. The reservation was made under Mr. Reed's name. That's impossible, Uncle Walter interjected. I called myself to arrange this dinner. Antonio materialized beside our table again. Good evening. Is there a problem? Tyler turned to him with an authoritative air. Yes, there seems to be confusion about the bill. This is a Wilson family event that I arranged. Ah, Antonio nodded understandingly. Mr. Wilson, while you did call to inquire about availability, the actual reservation was confirmed and guaranteed by Mr. Reed. He is a platinum member of our private dining program and has dining privileges that include our most exclusive spaces. I opened the leather folder to find a bill totaling $3,247.82. The itemized list included multiple bottles of champagne at $400 each, several orders of the Japanese A5 Wagyu at $180 per serving, truffle supplements added to nearly every dish, and wine pairings that no one had bothered to ask the price of before ordering. Tyler's face flushed red. Mark doesn't even eat with us. He was sitting at another table. Nevertheless, Antonio continued smoothly, the reservation and table are in Mr. Reed's name. The bill goes to him unless he instructs us otherwise. All eyes turned to me as I took a deliberate sip of my coffee, examining the bill with casual interest. $3,000. I mused aloud. That's quite a celebration. My grandfather's eyes narrowed. If there's an issue with the payment, I can certainly cover it. No issue at all, I replied. I'm just admiring the Wilson family's impressive appetite for expensive champagne. Tyler's expression shifted from confusion to anger. What exactly is going on here, Mark? Did you plan this? Plan what? Being publicly humiliated and then presented with the bill for the privilege? Not typically my idea of a good time. You know what I mean, Tyler hissed, leaning forward. This whole charade with the important visitors, the acquisition talk, the special treatment from the restaurant. What game are you playing? I closed the bill folder and looked around the table. No game, Tyler. Unlike some people, I don't find enjoyment in manipulating others or creating public spectacles. Then why is your name on the reservation? Aunt Pamela asked, her voice higher than usual. Because I made it, I answered simply. When I received the invitation, I called Antonio to arrange the best possible experience for grandfather's birthday. I've been a patron here for several years. Several years? Uncle Walter repeated incredulously. On a programmer's salary? I smiled slightly. I haven't been just a programmer for quite some time. So what Senator Clark said, my grandfather began, will be public knowledge by morning, I confirmed. Quantum Sphere Technologies has acquired Meridian Tech in a deal valued at $2.8 billion. As CTO and significant shareholder of QSD, my personal net worth changed considerably with today's signing. A stunned silence fell over the table. You're actually a billionaire? Madison finally asked, her voice small. On paper, at least, I acknowledged. Though I prefer to focus on the technologies we're developing rather than personal wealth metrics. Tyler's face had gone from red to ashen. All this time, all these years. You've been what, secretly rich and just letting us think? Letting you think what, Tyler? I interrupted, my voice finally taking on an edge. That I was less worthy of respect because I had less money? That my value as a person or as family was somehow tied to my bank account? That's not fair. He protested weakly. Isn't it? This table is for family. You can find a spot outside. Those were your exact words less than 2 hours ago. What changed, Tyler? Not me. I'm exactly the same person I was when I walked in tonight. Jessica reached across the table to touch my arm. Mark, we're all happy for your success. Truly. Thank you, Jessica. I believe you are. My grandfather cleared his throat. Mark, it seems we've underestimated you all these years. The Wilson business acumen clearly runs in your veins after all. I'm not a Wilson, I said quietly. My legal name is Mark Reed. I changed it after college to honor my father. The shock on my grandfather's face was worth every moment of discomfort I'd endured that evening. You abandoned the family name? He asked, genuine hurt in his voice for the first time. I didn't abandon anything, grandfather. The family name abandoned me long ago. Tyler, desperate to regain control of the situation, forced a laugh. Well, this is all very dramatic, but the bottom line is we're all family here. Water under the bridge, right? And now that we know about your success, we should definitely talk about some potential synergies with Wilson Financial. I have several clients who would be interested in early-stage tech investments. I turned to him with a calm gaze. Tyler, do you remember my 13th birthday? He blinked at the non sequitur. What? No, why would I? I do, I continued. Uncle Walter and Aunt Pamela gave me a card with $20. You got a new mountain bike the same week. When I asked if I could go riding with you and your friends, you told me Wilson adventures are for real Wilsons only and rode away laughing. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. We were kids, Mark. Kids say stupid things. Yes, they do. But you're not a kid anymore, and an hour ago, you said essentially the same thing in front of this entire table. So no, I don't think I'll be discussing investment synergies with you or anyone else at Wilson Financial. I stood up, taking the bill folder with me. If you'll excuse me, I need to speak with Antonio about the payment arrangements. As I walked away, I heard the hushed, urgent conversations erupting behind me. My name was repeated several times, along with billions, and acquisition, and Reed, not Wilson. Antonio met me at the host station, a knowing look in his eyes. Everything satisfactory, Mr. Reed? Perfectly orchestrated, Antonio. Thank you. The pleasure is mine. And regarding the bill? I handed him my credit card. Charge the full amount. They never have to know. As you wish. He processed the payment discreetly. May I ask a personal question? Of course. Was it worth it? Seeing their reactions? I considered this for a moment. It wasn't about their reactions, Antonio. It was about finally seeing them clearly for who they are, and more importantly, seeing myself clearly for who I am not. He nodded thoughtfully. A valuable realization at any price. Indeed. I signed a receipt, adding a generous tip for the wait staff. Now, I believe I have a family situation to conclude. When I returned to the table, the atmosphere had transformed completely. Gone was the festive celebration, replaced by tense, whispered conversations that halted abruptly as I approached. My grandfather sat stone-faced at the head of the table, his birthday cake largely untouched before him. "The bill has been taken care of," I announced calmly. "Mark, you didn't have to do that," Uncle Walter protested weakly. "I know I didn't have to. I chose to." Tyler couldn't contain himself any longer. "So that's it? You waltz in here after years of minimal contact, put on this whole show about being some tech billionaire, and expect us all to what? Apologize? Beg for forgiveness?" I studied him for a moment. "I don't expect anything from you, Tyler. I never have, and that's been the healthiest expectation I could have had." "Then why even come tonight?" he demanded. "Why not just stay in your rich tech bubble if we're so beneath you now?" "I came because I was invited," I replied simply. "And because I thought it might be the last time I needed to see any of you." A painful silence fell over the table. "What exactly does that mean?" my grandfather asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "It means I'm closing a chapter of my life, grandfather. For 34 years, I've carried the weight of never being enough for this family. Not Wilson enough. Not rich enough. Not connected enough. Tonight confirmed what I've always suspected, that my value to most of you is directly proportional to what I can offer materially." "That's not true," Aunt Pamela protested. "We're family." "Are we? Because an hour ago, your son publicly humiliated me with your tacit approval." No one at this table except Jessica objected. I turned to my cousin. "Thank you for that, by the way." Jessica nodded, tears in her eyes. "Mark," my grandfather began, "clearly there have been misunderstandings over the years. But surely you can see that family is family. Blood is thicker than water. The full proverb," I corrected gently, "is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It actually means the opposite of how people usually interpret it, that the bonds we choose are stronger than those we're born into." I looked around the table, making eye contact with each person. I didn't choose to lose my father when I was 7. I didn't choose to be taken in by relatives who treated me as a burden rather than a child deserving of love. I didn't choose to be excluded from family events, or to be reminded constantly that I wasn't a real Wilson. My voice remained steady, though the emotions behind my words were decades in the making. But I did choose to work my way through MIT instead of asking for help. I chose to build a career based on merit rather than connections. I chose to value people for their character rather than their bank accounts. And now, I'm choosing to walk away from toxic relationships that have never served me. "You can't just erase family," Tyler argued, though his usual confidence was noticeably absent. "I'm not erasing anyone, Tyler. I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference." Uncle Walter leaned forward. "Mark, let's be reasonable. We're all adults here. Whatever happened in the past is the past. We should focus on moving forward as a family." "Moving forward would require acknowledgement of the past, Uncle Walter. I've never heard a single apology from anyone at this table for how I was treated growing up." The uncomfortable silence that followed was telling. "I thought not," I continued. "But that's actually fine. I don't need apologies anymore. I just need closure." My grandfather, never one to lose control of a situation, tried another approach. "Mark, regardless of past grievances, you're still my grandson. I'm an old man now, and family becomes more important with age. Perhaps we could start fresh. Get to know the man you've become." There was a hint of genuine emotion in his voice that gave me pause. For a brief moment, I saw not the imposing family patriarch but an elderly man confronting his mortality and the consequences of his choices. "I appreciate the sentiment, grandfather. But relationships aren't built on convenience, or suddenly discovered when they become potentially advantageous. They're nurtured over time through consistent care and respect." I turned to Jessica. "You showed me kindness when no one else did. You're welcome in my life anytime." Her husband squeezed her hand supportively. "Thank you, Mark. That means a lot to her. To us. Tyler, unable to read the room, made one last attempt. So that's it? You made your money and now you're too good for us? For the family that raised you? I couldn't help but laugh, not unkindly but with genuine amazement at his persistent misunderstanding. Tyler, you still don't get it. This isn't about money. It never was. It's about basic human decency and respect. I pulled out my phone and pulled up a recent news article. By the way, how is the Wilson financial expansion into Asian markets really going? Because according to this report from the Financial Times, your Singapore office closed last month amid allegations of mismanagement. Tyler's face drained of color. That's private company business. Not according to your investor's lawsuit, it isn't. Uncle Walter interjected quickly. We're handling some temporary setbacks. Nothing unusual in the financial sector. Is that what you call a 43% drop in valuation and executive resignations? I asked mildly. Interesting perspective. My grandfather's sharp gaze moved between Tyler and Uncle Walter. What is he talking about? You told me the Singapore expansion was exceeding expectations. Tyler loosened his tie nervously. Grandfather, we can discuss this privately. Tonight is about your birthday. Indeed it is, I agreed, standing up. And I wouldn't want to detract from the celebration with business talk. I should be going anyway. My grandfather reached out suddenly, catching my wrist with surprising strength for a man his age. Wait. Is what you're implying true? About Wilson Financial? I looked into his eyes, the eyes that had dismissed me countless times over the years, and saw genuine concern, not for me but for his precious family legacy. I suggest you ask for a full audit, grandfather. Tyler has been making promises to investors that the company can't keep. The house of cards is starting to collapse. I gently removed his hand from my wrist. Consider that my parting gift, one businessman to another. Tyler half rose from his seat. You have no right to interfere in our business. You're not even a Wilson anymore. You're right about one thing, I acknowledged. I'm not a Wilson. I'm a Reed. And I'm at peace with that. I nodded respectfully to my grandfather. Happy birthday. I wish you good health and clarity in the years ahead. As I turned to leave, Jessica stood and embraced me. This isn't goodbye, she whispered. Not for us. No, I agreed. Not for us. I walked out of the private dining room with my head high, feeling lighter than I had in years. Antonio met me at the main entrance with my coat. Leaving so soon, Mr. Reed? I've said everything I needed to say. He nodded understandingly. Sometimes the most powerful statement is knowing when to exit. Exactly. I smiled, genuinely this time. Thank you for everything tonight. The pleasure was mine. Your table will always be waiting. As the valet brought my car around, I took one last look at the restaurant where a chapter of my life had finally closed. The night air felt clean and full of possibility. Tomorrow would bring new headlines, new business challenges, and perhaps most importantly, a new sense of freedom from the past that had held me captive for too long. I tipped the valet generously and drove away from Elysium, leaving behind both the artificial paradise it was named for and the family that had never truly been mine. That night at Elysium happened 6 months ago. The morning after my grandfather's dinner, as predicted, the business world exploded with news of the quantum sphere acquisition of Meridian Tech. My photo appeared on financial news channels, and suddenly the name Mark Reed was being mentioned alongside tech industry legends. Within 48 hours of my revelation at the dinner, the inevitable happened. My inbox and phone began filling with messages from Wilson family members. Uncle Walter wanted to discuss potential investment opportunities. Aunt Pamela sent a gushing email about how families should support each other, and invited me to her charity gala. Madison suddenly remembered our special bond as cousins, and asked if I could help her husband's startup. Even my grandfather reached out, his message more dignified but no less transparent. I'd like to have lunch with my grandson. There's much we should discuss about your future and the Wilson legacy. The only message I responded to was Jessica's simple text. Proud of you. Coffee sometime? We met the following week at a quiet cafe far from the Wilson family's usual haunts. Jessica brought photos of her children, and no agenda beyond genuine connection. Tyler is furious, she told me, stirring her latte. Grandfather ordered a complete audit of Wilson Financial after the dinner. It's not good, Mark. Tyler has been hiding losses and exaggerating gains for years. I suspected as much, I replied. His lifestyle never matched what a company of that size could legitimately provide its executives. The family is in damage control mode. Several key investors have pulled out. I nodded but offered no solution. This wasn't my problem to fix. They're all talking about you, you know, she continued, trying to figure out how they missed the signs of your success. Uncle Walter keeps saying he always knew you had potential. We both laughed at that. And how are you? I asked. Any fallout from maintaining contact with the family pariah? She smiled. I've always been the quiet one they underestimate. Besides, my husband's law practice is independent of the Wilson businesses, so we're insulated from the financial drama. We talked for hours that day, filling in the gaps of our lives. Jessica had always seen the dysfunction in the family but had chosen a different path than mine, working from within to create small pockets of decency. I respected her choice, even if it wasn't one I could have made. Before we parted, she asked the question I'd been expecting. Will you ever reconcile with them? With any of them? I considered this carefully. Reconciliation requires accountability, Jessica. It requires acknowledging harm and showing genuine change. I haven't seen evidence of either. She nodded sadly. For what it's worth, I think grandfather might actually regret some things. In his own way. Perhaps, I allowed. But regret without action is just sentiment. Over the following months, I established clear boundaries. I redirected all Wilson family financial requests to my wealth management team, who had strict instructions to decline politely. I sent a respectful but firm email to my grandfather, explaining that I was open to a relationship based on mutual respect but not one based on business interests or the Wilson legacy. He never responded. Tyler, predictably, went from solicitation to hostility when his overtures were rejected. He gave an ill-advised interview to a business magazine, implying that my success was due to Wilson family connections. My legal team sent a cease and desist letter, and no further comments appeared in the press. Meanwhile, I focused on building the life I wanted. I expanded my circle of close friends, genuine people who had known and valued me before wealth complicated relationships. I started a foundation supporting tech education for underprivileged youth, remembering my own struggles paying for college. Most importantly, I began therapy to address the deep-seated wounds of childhood rejection. My therapist helped me understand that the longing for family acceptance had shaped many of my choices, even as I thought I was leaving that desire behind. The opposite of love isn't hate, she told me during one particularly insightful session. It's indifference. When you truly heal, you won't need to prove anything to the Wilsons or protect yourself from them. They simply won't matter that much anymore. I wasn't there yet, but I was working toward that healthy indifference. 3 months after the dinner, I received an unexpected call from my grandfather's assistant. He had suffered a minor stroke and was asking to see me. Despite my reservations, I visited him at the hospital the next day. The mighty Roger Wilson looked diminished against the white hospital sheets, but his mind was still sharp. Mark, he acknowledged as I entered. You came. I did. Not for the Wilson name, I presume. No, I confirmed. For basic human decency. He nodded slowly. Something I perhaps failed to demonstrate consistently. It wasn't quite an apology, but from my grandfather, it was unprecedented. The audit of Wilson Financial revealed significant improprieties. He continued. Tyler has been removed from his position. I'm sorry to hear that, I said and meant it. Despite everything, I took no joy in the family's troubles. Are you? He asked shrewdly. After how he treated you? His behavior reflected his character, not mine. I don't need his downfall to validate my worth. My grandfather studied me for a long moment. You are not what I expected, Mark Reed. I never was, grandfather. That was the problem. We talked for nearly an hour, not about business or money or the Wilson legacy, but about simpler things. He asked about my father, questions he never bothered to ask when I was growing up. I told him about my dad's music, his kindness, his dreams for my future. As I prepared to leave, he said something that stayed with me. You built yourself without us. Perhaps that was for the best. Perhaps it was, I agreed. That visit didn't magically heal decades of hurt, but it provided a kind of closure I hadn't expected. My grandfather passed away 2 months later. I attended the funeral but stood at the back, respecting the family's grief without inserting myself into it. Jessica joined me there, holding my hand as the Wilson patriarch was laid to rest. The reading of the will contained one final surprise. My grandfather had amended his testament after our hospital conversation. He left me my father's guitar, which I hadn't known was in his possession all these years, along with a note. This belonged to a better man than me. Now it returns to his son, who proved to be better than all of us. Today, that guitar hangs on the wall of my home office. Not as a trophy or a vindication, but as a reminder of where I came from and the values that truly matter. The greatest lesson from my journey isn't about revenge or even success. It's about defining your own worth in a world eager to define it for you. It's about building a life based on integrity rather than appearances. And perhaps most importantly, it's about understanding that family isn't determined by blood or names, but by consistent love and respect. I still see Jessica regularly. Her children call me Uncle Mark, and I've established college funds for them that their parents don't know about yet. I've found peace in creating my own chosen family of friends who value me for who I am, not what I have. As for Tyler and the others, I wish them well from a distance. Some wounds are healed by reconciliation, but others are healed by respectful separation. I've learned that it's not selfish to prioritize your well-being by setting boundaries with those who have repeatedly shown they don't respect your worth. The $3,000 bill at Elysium wasn't about the money. It was about standing up for myself in a moment of clarity, recognizing that I deserved better than I had been given, and having the courage to walk away from toxic relationships even when they came wrapped in the package of family. True wealth isn't measured in dollars or status. It's measured in genuine connections, inner peace, and the freedom to live authentically without seeking external validation. By that measure, I was rich long before my bank account reflected it. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family or walk away from toxic relationships? What helped you find the strength to prioritize your well-being? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more healing than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to know your worth in every relationship in your life.